All right, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker this morning. The topic is the power of inner relationship. If you can't lead yourself forward, who's going to do it for you? When you're sad, scared, or frustrated, your inner resources determine your choices. Can you connect to your soul, or is your brain stuck in the past? What will you do to help yourself when you feel like you have nothing left to pick yourself up? Our speaker this morning is an intuitive powerhouse, born with the innate abilities to reveal to you your own hidden best traits. She's a warrior spirit, well-trained in Taekwondo, and in her own words, she has spunk, chutzpah, and guts. Stubborn, fierce, resilient, resourceful, quirky, and resolute. I would second all of those. She will share her personal story about leading from within this morning, rising up to meet the challenges of life, including 2 battles with cancer, serving in political office, and other stories as her soul guides. This deeply personal talk hopefully will inspire you to be the best you can be. So please give a warm circle welcome to a longtime friend of mine and circle, Christi Maybo.
So much for that warm welcome, Annabella. When Ken asked me to come and speak today, I found the timing of it interesting. And my soul kept saying it was time to talk from the heart and to share my personal story, what I had been through over the course of the last year. And I thought, well, usually my focus is on other people, helping you have tools to become a better you. And my soul was very insistent that there was no better information that I could relay than to talk from the heart in terms of how difficult it was to be born intuitive, having access to wisdom far beyond my mind for my entire life. And then last year, being blindsided that the cancer I thought I had healed from came back. There was no forewarning. There was no, hey, this is coming up ahead. And in my life, it was literally, as crazy as this is, it was the first time I had an experience that there was nothing warning me in advance. And as I went through the surgery, for the first time in my life, I couldn't connect to that resource that I'd relied on all along because the drugs stopped that connection. And for the first time, the only thing I had to rely on was myself. And that's why I wanted to talk about this idea of inner leadership and the relationship with ourselves. Because in that moment, for the first time in my life, regardless of a lifetime of inner clearing and healing and guidance from spirit and various other resources, for the first time, things I didn't know I hadn't dealt with were in my face. And for the first time, I had one thought at a time. Now, if you know me, my brain is like popcorn. It goes all over the place. There is no, I don't think in a logical sequence because that's just not how I'm wired. So to have that kind of experience at this point in my life was shocking. And as I went through my surgery and had to relearn how to walk and how to do all the basic things that I had once done, I started to discover a depth of my inner pain that I had no idea I had never addressed. Because for the first time, I couldn't rely on all the resources that were there. And I hope that no one ever has to go through an experience like that, but that you could learn through my experience. In the hospital, they had this little button that you could push. And anytime you push it, the nurse will come in. And unless someone came in to check on me, I didn't use the button. And it was only as I was home and I was healing that my husband was taking care of me that I realized, oh my God, I never asked for help when I needed it. Why? It wasn't like I wasn't hungry or thirsty and didn't need something. Why, after all these years, would I be in a place where I couldn't ask for the things I needed when I was in an environment that would provide it? And what I was forced to face for the first time was areas of my upbringing that I didn't know had stopped me from being taken care of and thrust me into a role of caretaker. And with all the work that I had done, I had built up so much spiritual muscle that I was almost like a well-muscled, one-armed human being that I hadn't included in the building up of my physical resources or stretching my mind wide enough in the process of developing a spiritual muscle. And now here I was forced to face the limitations that I hadn't known I didn't address. Blind spots, which I always help people with, and I tell you, I have them too. But being faced with them to the depth and degree that they revealed themselves was shocking and forced me to literally tear down the entire paradigm that I had relied on this entire point in my life. Now, when I ran for political office back in my 20s, I did it for one reason. I wanted to make a difference. And I naively thought that because I was for local office, that we all cared about the town and wanted the same benefits for the town. And what I discovered was that wasn't the case. That's the only part of my political experience that matters. And finding out the discrepancies between what each person's viewpoint was in terms of what does it mean to be the greatest good. Now, we're all spiritually and intuitively in tune, so we tend to look for the highest good. But what I found for myself was that doing that was preventing me from looking at the purest good. And I was really shocked to find out the difference for myself. When I looked at the highest good, I was always seeing things from Spirit's vantage point. And again, being born that way, that was my first go-to place. But what I learned was that Spirit didn't have to experience human emotion. Spirit wasn't limited by human experience. So for me, my brain and all the experiences that I acquired through my life caused me upstairs to look through life through a pinhole. Now imagine for just a second being able to connect with Spirit with no restrictions and realizing I am stuck by what my brain is capable of processing, because I had to make a different connection to myself in order to accept greater knowledge from Spirit. Now, this to me, I thought that I had known, I thought I had done all the work that I needed to do in order to be there. But being put in this position caused me to see that no matter what my viewpoint was, it was small and it was limited by human experience. And the clogs of emotional clutter that I didn't know were still there were causing greater and greater restriction on my mind. Now, the way I realized this was after my surgery, I ended up going through 9 months of chemo, and I wouldn't wish that on any human being ever. But the type of cancer that I have, they told me that if I wanted to live, this was the regimen. And having gone through it before, I knew what that experience was like. That one, they told me, this is like the Red Death, Christi. This is like the toughest chemo they have because you have a type of cancer that's extremely aggressive. And I thought, okay, back then, back in 2011, I'm going to learn everything I can from this experience because I was certain that was what it was about. And I did the absolute best that I could to learn everything I could going through the entire experience. But to find out last May that it came back, I was like, excuse my language, WTF. How is this possible that I could be revisiting this experience with everything I know and everything I've done, aside from the physical things that the doctors recommended, the inner work, the mental pieces, all of it? How is it possible that I was facing the same thing? And I sat in a place, not of fear, of total, complete petrification. Because my oncologist told me that if this ever came back, I would die. She was like, you will not live if this comes back. This is why we have to be so aggressive. Now, I'm not one to believe other people's thoughts because that's their place. But in that moment, all I could do is repeat what she had said to me. I'm going to die. How long do I have to live? Am I going to make it to this point next year? So for me to be here now talking to all of you, on one hand, feels like a miracle. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. On the other hand, in December, what I learned from myself, because I was in the throes of fear, and I reached the point where I felt like I had lost all of my inner strength. I had none left. And as I came to my final treatments in January, that same feeling of how am I going to get through this? Because when it came to my last treatment, I thought for myself, it's the last one. I'm going to be happy and excited. I made it to the end. But that morning, that wasn't what happened. That morning, the weight and the impact of everything I'd experienced laid on me like a ton of bricks. And for the first time, I felt like I had nothing to pick myself up. Now, I'd been through lots of challenges in my life. This wasn't my first go around. But I want you to imagine for just a moment, somebody being born with such a connection to spirit, and for the first time, just this past January at the end of the month, feeling like I had nothing left, nothing to pick myself up. And I took a deep breath, and that day my husband was as worn down as I was. And I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do here. I have to make it through this. And the last few were so hard I threw up during the treatments. And all of a sudden, my soul came in. And I was so grateful for all the work that I had done. And she started to tell me this. I know you're tired. I know you're weary, but we've got this. I know you're tired. I know you're weary, but we've got this. I know you're tired. I know you're weary, but we've got this. And the next thing I know, it's repeating like this chant in my head, and my arm is going, we got this. We got this. We got this. And I walked down the stairs as if my soul flung my body over my shoulder. We got this. And with the fierce and the might that I needed, I looked at my husband and I said, I know we're tired. I know we're weary, but we got this. And that was how we went to that last treatment. And of course, I ended up getting sick again during the treatment. And in the end, they let me ring the bell to finalize that this was done. And I collapsed in the chair, and all I could do was cry. I had nothing left between the combination of the drugs and the weight of everything I had gone through. And the reason I share that with you is because what I discovered was it was the power of my soul that I needed to guide me. That there was nothing that my brain had access to that could pull me through in that moment when I needed something beyond my own resources. But that was my inner resource. It was that wise part of me that had been buried underneath fear that I didn't realize I was carrying. Because in that moment, I only had one choice in my mind. I had to get this last treatment and finish what I'd started so that I could have as long a life as possible. Now, the truth of the matter is no doctor can tell me how long I'm going to live. I've done some research, and I don't like anything that I've read. So I have my wits, I have my soul, and I have my mind, and I have my choices. Now, I'm a firm believer in the power of our choices and how they can guide us forward. The problem I ran into for myself was if I believe in the power of my soul and what it's capable of, then I had to give up for me the beliefs that I deserved what I was experiencing, because I didn't feel like I deserved to experience cancer twice. And I thought to myself, if this isn't something I deserve and it's something I'm experiencing, then I can handle this in a different way. And what I found through that discovery for myself was how often people, and I say people because I started noticing it with my clients, because once I had the shift in my mind, I started hearing it all over the place. I noticed people asking the question, why is this happening? What did I do to deserve it? And I thought, nothing. What if you don't deserve what's happening, but it's happening anyway? How do you deal? How do I deal with an experience that I never wanted, that I would never wish on someone else? And the one thing that I found for myself was a whole battery of inner leadership skills. Things that I'd never thought about before. Things like self-authority. What does it mean if I put myself in the driver's seat in a way I've never been? What if I own authority for my life and stop thinking about what spirit wants for me or what my soul wants for me, and I focus in on my heart and let that vision guide me? Well, I started to see that the picture looked a lot different. That instead of asking spirit outside of me, why were certain things happening and getting that guidance, I found that my soul understood knowledge in a completely different way, because I've had human experience and I've had a lot of human emotion. And so the wisdom that my soul was able to provide me with looked entirely different than when I was communicating with a spirit being that had never been human. And I want to offer that to anybody who has spent more time focused in on spirit beings with all their love and guidance and assistance, that your own soul, believe it or not, can be even more powerful. At least that's what I've discovered. Because the access to ideas and solutions actually surpasses some of what the other spirit beings for me that I'd communicated with were able to help me understand. Because for the first time, all of my humanity has to be part of moving forward. Not just my spirit muscle, but my mind and the power of my emotions. And the power of my emotions is something that I don't know that until going through this entire, I'm going to call it a tragedy, really, brought to the forefront. Back in December, I had this moment where I was just so overburdened by fear that I didn't know how I was going to find a positive thing. Now, if you know me, I'm an optimist. I am like the brightest star that you'll find, like the sunshine. So here, for me to be in like only seeing darkness, was like shocking. It was like, where the hell is the light? How is this possible that this is what I'm experiencing after everything I've known? What on earth is going on here? And in that darkness, for the first time, I saw my sunshine. Now, I want you to understand the difference here. It wasn't that I was looking for sunlight outside myself. It was that I was finding it inside me. And with that, I did some exercises, the same stuff I teach my clients in my classes and all our individual sessions, working with the root of my fear. What the hell was it that I was so afraid about? Because I knew, we all know, the more you focus on the fear, the bigger it gets. It's going to grow like a freaking, like just going to snowball. None of us want to be in that place. And what I discovered was shocking. I discovered a part of my soul going all the way back to age 2 that thought that my parents were going to kill me and was in fear for my life. Now, because I was born with such intuitiveness, I was constantly communicating with them on a soul level, not realizing that the paralysis of my body, the things it couldn't do, is how they looked at me. Well, a little child isn't capable of thinking this way or understanding this or doing that. But the truth of the matter was that my knowledge surpassed all of that. So imagine for a minute having a child communicating with you through mental telepathy and you can't hear them. And you're like, what's going on? And they're like, what is going on? I'm telling you. Well, that feeling inside of not being heard or understood and feeling even invisible brought with it such amount of fear that it was like, well, why having the knowledge of seeing the actions they were taking to the best of their human ability wasn't matching what I needed as an intuitive being? And so understanding that unleashed a part of my soul that had such phenomenal skills and gifts and talents that I thought, dear God, thank God I have access to the tools I do. I've been missing out. With everything I had access to, there was so much more that got locked up in my youthful pain. And it had less to do with anybody's best intentions and more to do with what I told myself up here. Now, the fact of the matter is I lived. They did the best they could to take care of me. I didn't die, but my belief system about how scary this world is something I never could have imagined going through that the last year was going to prepare me for what was going on in the world when I would be coming out of this experience. Because we see a world where there are people who literally find this place as scary and terrifying as I discovered I felt. Now, having worked with a lot of intuitive people over the years, I've yet to meet an intuitive person who doesn't say to me, what was I thinking coming to this planet? It's crazy. So if you have that kind of mentality, I want you to keep in mind that you also have an understanding of an intense amount of fear. And the way that I learned to walk through the fear, aside from the inner part and making the disconnection so that I wasn't stuck in the knowledge my brain had, once I cleared that part out, what I connected to with those soul skills was a smarter, wiser way to refocus the fear and shift the viewpoint. And I found that to be one of the most important things for myself to be able to go forward. Not alleviating or letting go of the fear, but changing what I was afraid about. Instead of being afraid that I could die, because the truth of the matter is at some point I am going to die. This body isn't made to last infinitely. But when I switched it and thought, if I don't share who I am and what I have access to, then people that don't have to stay in pain might still be in pain. You know, that for me is probably one of the worst things that someone could say to me. I had a client that I did a talk last year for an organization, and at the end I pulled this woman aside and mentioned something that I saw that had come up. And during this pandemic, she decided that she would reach out, and she had a session, and she said the worst possible thing any human being could say to me. You know, a year ago, Christi, you told me the same thing, and I didn't believe you. I've been in pain ever since. That's a whole year of her life she can't get back. And I maybe have a little bit more sensitivity to the precious gift and value of time because it's in my face. How much time is there? I don't know. But I found a feistiness inside of me that grew because I can see pain and I hear pain. And I can hear the limitations that people see in themselves and how they share their stories with me. I'm not trying to. I can't avoid it. It's just obvious. And so being able to do my little part, my little role in this world to help people understand that there is a different way, that you don't have to be in pain, and that the pain that is the most terrifying is the pain that's hidden by blind spots because it's normalized. Because pain that hurts, you're looking for solutions. You're seeking out a way to do something different. But the pain that's normalized and hidden in plain sight, that to me is the most terrifying because you don't know that you're limited. I didn't know. I had no idea. You know, when I went through cancer the first time, because of all the abilities I have, there was this day that I was just like, well, I kind of knew in advance. Let me just say that and skip that story and go to a different one. I had this moment where Pete and I were going to the beach. And I was asking, how is it possible that the signs were there and I was actually guided straight for this experience and not to avoid it? And I was shown this beer bottle being thrown out into the ocean. And I was asked, what happens? And I saw it breaking up into a bunch of shards. And I heard, watch, what happens the longer that glass is in the ocean? And I watched and I was like, well, it becomes a piece of sea glass. And the guidance was to keep that in mind, to think of this experience as if you're being polished to become a precious piece of sea glass. I was able to hold on to that as I went through that experience. But now here it is, it came back the second time. And here's what I see. An oyster thrown out of the ocean. What do I do with that? An oyster thrown, this is supposed to help me get through this? An oyster thrown out of the ocean. Well, first you got to understand the oyster, Christi. Please explain to me the oyster, right? Me and my having this conversation. Well, if you think about it, sand gets inside the oyster. The oyster secretes to protect itself from this piece of sand until eventually a pearl is created. Somebody comes, removes the pearl, now the oyster's out of pain. Does anybody who wears a pearl necklace ever think about the pain an oyster went through? Oh, no. Well, that's what you need to think about. How is this supposed to help me? So I'm in pain and pearls of wisdom are going to come out as a result? That's pretty mean. I'm sorry, but that's really fucked up. This is my take on this whole thing. No, that's not the point for you, Christi. That's what you're understanding. Okay, then give me the point. The point is this. You have a choice. Right, free will. Okay? You have a choice to consider to stay a teeny tiny piece of sea glass from a broken bottle, or you can choose to understand how to unleash the power of the entire ocean. What? Hence my understanding that I'm looking at the world through this teeny tiny little pinhole. I was accepting being a piece of polished sea glass as if that was a good thing. It was broken from the rest of it. That was originally a bottle that was being tossed around by the ocean. It never once occurred to me, what would it mean if I were the ocean instead? Well, that would mean that I had to own the power of my soul. And that would mean that I would have to accept what I'm capable of. Now, it took a year for me to understand that without a lot of cussing, because the process that I went through was grueling, to say the least. I do not have solid ground underneath my feet as I share this with you. I am still in the process of understanding what it means to actually wield the power of my soul and to use that in the way that it was intended. I can only tell you that the majority of the belief systems that I held that allowed me to accept becoming a piece of sea glass have had to go to the side. And that the process of that has been difficult, grueling, dark, and ugly. Because it's asked me to take ways and principles that I believed in and throw them to the side to say, you know what, that actually limits me. Because it doesn't make me the purveyor of my destiny. So for me, areas where I thought that, my soul had this plan, this took me to like a whole nother level. I'm going to share one more thing that I've learned over the course of just the last couple of weeks. This is my truth. It does not have to be yours. I can only share my experience with you, but I say it with passion because it's my firsthand experience. That doesn't mean you should take it on for yourself. Don't do that. I want you to think and have your own opinions and not say, oh my God, this has to be the way. Because I know what the disruption this has caused for myself has been, and I don't want to cause that for anybody else. But because I can have this access to my soul and I can see through time and space, I was looking at my life in the different points in time and having access. This young part who was pissed, she was like, well, my parents made different choices and decisions than they were supposed to when I was born into this family. And I was like, okay. She's like, I can't do what I'm here to do now. Well, what do you mean? That path is obliterated. And I was like, well, I'm not dead. I'm here to live and I can have an impact. I'm going to practice being the ocean. So, wiser than me, self, soul that has less life experience than I do, I have now acquired a lifetime of experience that apparently, according to you, we didn't want. That means that I have to be capable of accomplishing something that was never in the cards. What do you mean? Well, if you're telling me that we came in with one intention and that was obliterated because of other things that happened, that means I acquired a lifetime of knowledge and experience that wasn't intended, which means that I have to be capable of doing something that's never been considered. I want us to look at what that looks like. A little feistiness, because, it is me after all. She says, wait a minute, what? Well, I started accessing new tools. And she looks to me and she goes, oh my God, that timeline never existed. What do you mean? She's like, Christi, you just created a timeline that never existed. Okay. She was like, and then she's sobbing, my future's bright. There's happiness ahead. It can be positive. And I was like, dear God, please let this be the part that was like so stuck in this fucking thing that I had to get the cancer a second time because God forbid I get this again or it comes back. I want to live. I don't want to have to deal with this crap. But the power that I understood meant that I was going through a transition. And then I finally understood why it was so hard to see what was ahead of me. I had to write it because it didn't exist. Now, for me, there was a point in time where I felt such a sense of confusion. How could I have so much clarity and connection and not see that path ahead for myself? But it was cloudy and it was confusing. And I thought, well, maybe it's just because it is unwritten and I'm writing it based on today's knowledge that wasn't necessarily intended to be acquired. Now, for me, that's blown my mind, to be honest. And this idea of being able to unleash a level of wisdom that was held captive inside of me and share that in a way that takes all my life experience and propels me forward in a way that can educate about a new possibility. Well, to me, that just feels like such a gift. Because if anything that I could say or share from my own experience could help somebody feel inspired or just out of a little bit of pain or have a blind spot revealed. I mean, is there a more precious gift to be able to share? Not for me, because that means that people can get into a deeper heart space. And the deeper heart space we're in, the more love we have to share. And the more love that we have to share, the better the world becomes for all of us. And then we start connecting from that pure place of love instead of what for me I learned was the higher place, because that purer place brought out more of my best traits than I knew were hidden because I shifted my viewpoint. So I'm looking at the clock and I'm realizing I think I've gone over the allotted time. So thank you for letting me continue. But I want to be mindful of that. And I want to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to share my experiences with you. Thank you very much.